Okay, good morning, everyone. And thank you for all the preceding speakers for such excellent papers. I don't have to live up to those because I'm not really giving a paper. I'm relying on you to be asking me some questions. Can I just have a hand raise for people who have visited the new museum? Good. That's fine. That works then. So, just by way of preamble, as many of you will, I'm sure, know, on the 31st of March this year, the much anticipated new Perth Museum, fashioned from the former City Hall, opened its doors for the first time. It's the most comprehensive redisplay of the archaeology and material culture of Perth and Kinross in the history of the museums in this area. The first museum, that of the Literary and Antiquarian Society of Perth, opened in 1824, and its rotunda is still part of the former Museum and Art Gallery, now the Perth Art Gallery. And some of you may remember these images from previous talk I've given. The archaeology collection, indeed all the collections, have grown enormously since those early days. And for the first time, the museum has the space to give a more or less comprehensive account of the region's history rooted in those collections and spanning some 10,000 years. Rather than describe how we got there, which would inevitably repeat much of what I've covered 2 years ago at TAFAC conference, and operating on the assumption that the majority of you have seen the new museum, which your hand raise confirmed, thank you, at least once. And so you're part of the now just over 200,000 visitors that we've had since March. I thought it might be more fun to spend the time as a question time. So I give the floor to you all. Please ask away. So I think we're going to have to deploy the roving mic, are we? Hi, John.
Hello. Press the bottom button until the green light comes on.
Yeah.
So hold it until the green light, the small green light.
Yeah, it's on. Thanks, John. So,
I think the museum is beautifully displayed, particularly like the archaeological finds that are displayed. Can you tell us what the most challenging thing was about creating the new displays?
if I stand here, it's all holler, can everybody hear me or put it on mine? Yeah. Okay, thank you for that question. Oh gosh, how long have we got for all the challenges that there were? I suppose in terms of moving collections, the two biggest challenges were getting the logboat out of Perth Museum and Art Gallery as was, and into the new museum with another period of conservation treatment in between, and alongside that, the challenge of getting the bigger pieces of pictish stone sculpture out of the other building and into the new museum, and which we couldn't have done without the assistance of Graciela Ainsworth and her team. But they were mammoth tasks and fairly scary tasks because of the difficulty of moving such big objects in relatively tight, confined spaces. And they did give me some sleepless nights, I have to say. Next, Hans. Here's the question. Thank you, Mark.
So, can you tell? I mean, obviously the museum has human remains displayed in a discrete sort of part of the main viewing area. So, what is the current state of play in respect to the display and ethics of showing human remains, and what do the public think about this?
Obviously, we had to think long and hard about putting any human remains on display, but we did feel that they were really important strands of evidence to the story that we were trying to tell. And we have, on previous occasions when we've displayed human remains in the former building, asked people what they felt about that. So we have done kind of surveys of visitors to ascertain their feelings about seeing human remains, and certainly in terms of displaying human remains which come from this area, the response we've had in the past has been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, I could safely characterize it as 90% responses in favor of seeing human remains. And in fact, whenever we do that kind of survey, more anxiety is expressed about seeing dead animals in the museum than the remains of human beings, because they think we just go out and kill animals and then put them on display in the museum. So, I mean, that's always proved a bigger issue to get around. So we decided we would display human remains from this area of whatever period, if they were available, and we do have a certain amount in the collection, but that we would warn people that these things are going to be on display, which is why they're off on the ground floor, on the side galleries, and sort of it dead ends, if you like. So you don't have to go all the way in, as it were, to confront those things if you don't want to, and that kind of runs in tandem with a wider policy on human remains, because as a museum that did a lot of collecting in the 19th century, and so has given us a colonial inheritance that we have to deal with. There is also the question of whether you should put on display the human remains from other indigenous cultures. And our policy there is in line with lots of other museums around the world. We don't do that. And in fact, we try, where possible, to make sure human remains from other indigenous cultures go back to those places of origin. So that kind of probably summarizes what our position is.
Thank you. But is there anything you think's missing there that you would like to display?
Is there anything missing? Well, of course, in this iteration or version, I'm kind of happy that what we've got is a good representation. I guess I'm more worried by the fact that, as we all know, archaeology is not now going to stop because we've created these set of displays, and there's going to be lots of really nice material turn up. We've seen a lot of it this morning, including from the various hill forts that Dave's excavated, and so it's how it's building in that kind of flexibility that we can start incorporating things like that and swapping things out to update the story. That's the big thing. And kind of linked to that is there are, as well as our own collection, some really nice choice items from this part of the world, but which are looked after by other museums. So there are various things from the British Museum, from the Hunterian, from the National Museum in Edinburgh, and of course they're on loan, so inevitably that's a really short-term thing. So there are things there which I'd really like if they could always be here. like the Gledlion brooch and maybe the Tummel hoard and the brooches from Cluny, but we make the best we can of it, and we will have a changing program of those as well. Oh.
Thank you. Yes, the museum is beautiful. I want to get to the crux of it, if you like. I visited and went into the inner sanctum, and the cartoons that you have before you see the stone, and then seeing the stone itself, raised me this question about the carrying of the stone, the moving of the stone originally. And I think my question is the stone actually upside down? Because to me, where the pins for holding the carrying rings, if you were to lift it, it would flip the other way because there's more stone above that point than below.
Yeah.
Has a sample been done to sort of explore that?
Well, what you'll see on the stone there is that the rings have slots cut out so they can rest. So if you turn that upside down, that wouldn't work. So the rings would just hang loose. And you don't have to start lifting it until you've raised the rings and threaded a pole through it, which is probably the means in which, in the medieval period, it was carried. And there's something similar in, I think it's Hereford. It's either Hereford or Worcester Cathedral. There's a special chest which has rings and wooden bars that you slot through to carry this chest around. So this weighs 56 kilograms, and the recent movements of it to and from Westminster for the coronation have shown that 4 people can move it comfortably. So on a long pole, 4 people could be deployed, or even 2 people if you're going to be kind of mean about it. So we haven't, in the way that it's been moved around today, we haven't noticed any problems with those conceptualizations of how it was moved in the medieval period.
Thank you. A follow-up on the stone. The cartoon bit does give you the history of the stone and where it's been and so on. I was disappointed to miss out on the history of the stone itself, and I know there's been work done on carvings and chiseling and where it came from and so on. I may have missed it when I was in, but I couldn't find any. Are you going to add perhaps more to the display?
It probably gets least coverage in that introductory story. There is a couple of sentences which talk about the work that the geologist did to identify the stone and source it to somewhere very close to Scone as a counterbalance to the wonderful but fanciful stories about it, being the Pillar of Jacob or Scotus stone from Egypt. But again, as with the rest of the museum, this is a kind of first iteration of how we might talk about the stone, and we wanted for that first wave of display, if you like, is to share as much as possible in a condensed way to kind of get all the different facets in there, and in the future, either in that space itself or possibly as a temporary exhibition, we can focus on other issues, not least the many fragments of the stone that we've now discovered exist, and the incredible range of souvenirs as well.
Can I just the remote will see this at this point as well. So we just scroll down and check.
The whole morning, yeah.
Thank you. I was really impressed with the museum. I think you've all done a great job there. My question was about the Pictish standing stone on which you project colours to show what it might have looked like when it was if it was painted. So I was just wondering what the extent of the evidence is for that.
Well, to date, in Scotland, we have no evidence of actual residues on Pictish sculpture, mostly because nobody's ever looked for it, because there was this long-standing assumption that things probably weren't painted. Whereas if you look at the whole context of not only early medieval sculpture, but classical sculpture, and in fact sculpture from anywhere in any date, it generally gets painted because that's part of the objective of it. And the idea that sculpture wasn't painted is really a kind of 19th century idea about purity that kind of infects lots of other things. So we made the assumption, because I know it's a big research area that's taken off now, and there's lots of experimental work going on around colouring sculpture. And there's a talk coming up, in fact, at the museum in a couple of weeks' time, I think, from a researcher who's doing some of that work. So we looked at the kind of colours that would be available and the natural dyes you could use to kind of make colours, and compared it to the range of colours in manuscript art, for example, and that's what we based the colour scheme on to project onto the St Meadows stone.